The Rhön Mountains are a group of low mountains in central Germany, located around the border area where the states of Hesse, Bavaria and Thuringia come together. These mountains, which are at the extreme southeast end of the East Hesse Highlands, are partly a result of ancient volcanic activity. They are separated from the Vogelsberg Mountains by the river Fulda and its valley. The highest mountain in the Rhön is the Wasserkuppe, which is in Hesse. The Rhön Mountains are a popular tourist destination and walking area. Origins. The name Rhön is often thought to derive from the Celtic word Rheno, but numerous other interpretations are also possible. Records of the monks at Fulda Abbey from the Middle Ages describe the area around Fulda as well as more distant parts of the Rhön as Buckonia, the land of ancient beechwoods. In the Middle Ages, beech was an important raw material. Large-scale wood clearing resulted in the land of open spaces, 30% of which today is forested. Geography. Location lying within the states of Hesse, Bavaria and Thuringia. The Rhön is bounded by the Null to the northwest, the Thuringian Forest to the northeast, the Grabfeld to the southeast, Lower Franconia to the south, the Spessart Forest to the southwest and the Vogelsberg Mountains to the west. Division by type of volcanic activity. Based on the effects of ancient volcanic activity, the Rhön can be divided into the anterior Rhön, the Kuppenrhön, and the high Rhön. The terms anterior Rhön and Kuppenrhön are somewhat misleading, since the anterior Rhön also consists mainly of Kuppenlow mountains with dome-shaped summits. The name has genuine historic origins. The anterior Rhön, as viewed from Thuringia, forms the foothills of the mountain region. In this gently rolling landscape, numerous individual dome-shaped mountains rise on both sides of the border of Hesse and Thuringia and also, in some places, in Bavaria. These Kuppen of the remnants of ancient volcanoes of volcanic activity. Natural regions. High Rhön. The High Rhön is that part of the central Rhön that lies in Hesse, Bavaria, and to a lesser extent in Thuringia. It covers an area of 344 square kilometers. Landscape fact files by the BFN and is up to 950 meters and whose highland plateau, with elevations starting at 600 to 700 meters, are covered by solid basalt. Its core area in the northeast used to be called the Plattenrhön. The High Rhön is a natural regional major unit in the East Hesse Highlands. See Natural regions. The High Rhön has 5 main mountainous regions: Wasserkuppe, Long Rhön, Dammersfeld Ridge, Kreuzberg Group, Black Mountains. At the heart of the Rhön, albeit only the 4th highest summit of these mountains, is the Heidelstein on the border between Bavaria and Hesse on the Rhine-Weser watershed. It forms the main high point on the plateau of the Long Rhön, which runs northeast over the Sternberg as far as the Ellenbogen without crossing any significant lower ground. Within the Long Rhön, the basalt layer is almost unbroken. At the Heidelstein, another natural region, the Wasserkuppe branches off in a north to northwesterly direction to the Rhön's highest summit, the Wasserkuppe, whose basalt likewise covers a wide area, but is broken in places by bunter sandstone and Muschelkalk. In particular, the basalt Kuppen of the Warburg and Ehrenberg are slightly separated from the rest. Between the northeastern end of the Wasserkuppe at the Ehrenberg and the plateau of the Long Rhön from the Heidelstein to just beyond the Sternberg is the Upper Ulster Valley, which cuts into the bunter sandstone by up to about 300 meters and divides the Plattenrhön in two. The Long Rhön runs southwest along the main watershed to the Dammersfeld Ridge, which continues along the watershed via the Hohe Holland. Eierhauptberg to the Dammersfeldkuppe, the ridge being clearly narrower than the long Rhön in its basalt layer being interrupted several times. The Grosser and Kleiner Auersberg, separated by the valley of the Schmale Schien, are also part of this natural region. South of Heidelstein and Horhol, the narrow head of the Brenn Valley near Bischofsheim forms the boundary with another mountain group of the High Rhön, the Kreuzberg group, which contains the Arnsberg and the Kreuzberg. In between these two mountains lies the source of the Schigen. This river, which forms a wide and deep valley ahead flanked by the Dammersfeld Ridge, flows to the southwest. On the other side of the Schien Valley, and southwest of the Kreuzberg group, are the Black Mountains, which include the Schwarzenberg and Totninsberg. They are separated from the Kreuzberg group by the narrow valley of the Premütches upper reaches, the Kellersbach, clearly different from the aforementioned ridges as the eastern slope of the Long Rhön, which forms the transition zone from the High Rhön to the Muschelkalk region of the Melrichstadt GAU, the eastern part of the Werra GAU plateau. Individual domes rise from the descending Triassic beds east of the solid basalt covering of the Long Rhön in the interfluvials of the tributaries of the Franconian Saale between Brand and Struve, notably the Gangolfsberg and the Wasserkuppe. This landscape bears a clear resemblance to the Kuppenrhön. The Wildflecken training area, which covers an area of 74 square kilometers, equivalent to almost a quarter of the High Rhön, is not accessible to the public. Kuppenrhön, the 1,200 square kilometers of the Kuppenrhön in its narrow sense, to which the anterior Rhön also belongs, is the wide outer fringe of markedly different relief that circles around the High Rhön from the northeast through the northwest to the southwest. Numerous dome-shaped isolated mountains and hills rise above the valleys from around 500 to over 800 meters, whose basalt covering is concentrated around the summit regions and does not blanket the entire landscape, as it does in the High Rhön. The domes are cupped of the stumps of heavily weathered former volcanoes or volcanic pipes. Between pointed cones and broad domes lie many small plateaux, especially common in the anterior Rhön. Over a foundation of Middle Bunter sandstone lie stratigraphic sequences of Upper Bunter, Muschelkalk and Kuiper, the last two rocks only surviving where they have been protected by an overlying sheet of basalt. Woods cover less than a third of the area and are largely restricted to the summit regions. 5 natural regions may be distinguished: Anterior Rhön, Auersberg Kuppenrhön, Schwarzberg Kuppenrhön with the Hessian skittles, Milsberg Kuppenrhön, Bruckenau Kuppenrhön. The eastern part of the Kuppenrhön is the Thuringian Anterior Rhön, which reaches a height of 750.7 meters at the huge plateau of the Gebelberg in the southeast. There is hardly any Kuiper escarpment there at all. The Kuppen and plateau rest directly on a bedrock of Muschelkalk. This natural region runs northeast from the wide, pyramidal Pless, 645.4 meters, far into the Bunter sandstone of the Stadlangsfeld Hills that descend to the river Werra. In the west, the Middle Fulda Valley forms a natural boundary between Kaltensundheim in the south and below Dirmbach in the north. West of the Fulda Valley is the Auersberg Kuppenrhön, which lies mainly in Thuringia, but extends into Hesse in the southwest. This natural region runs from the town of Auersberg in the south, which gives the region its name, to the boundary with the Long Rhön at the Ellenbogen, 756.8 meters. In the northeast of the region, the prominent Kuppe of the Bayer reaches a height of 713.9 meters, but its northernmost summit is the popular viewing mountain of Oexen. The western boundary is the Middle Ulster Valley between Hilders in the south and below Butler in the north. West of the Ulster Valley is the Wasserkuppe, which lies mainly in Hesse, with elements in the southeast also extending into Thuringia. This region reaches a height of 629.9 meters at the Wasserkuppe in the north, where the countryside is enclosed by the SehLax walled forest. It reaches even greater elevations in the extreme southeast, where the Vogelsberg west of Tann stands opposite to and north of the Ausberg. This natural region is well known for the Hessian skittles, a striking regular array of high, gently rounded basalt cones up to 552.9 meters. North and south of the skittles, most of the kuppen in this natural region are also arranged in a row along the watershed between the Werra and the Fulda, and between the Ulster and the Horner respectively. To the west they do not quite reach the Horner at the Horner Plateau. To the south the Nust Valley below Obernus forms a natural boundary. The almost entirely Hessian range of the Milsberg Kuppenrhön, which bounds the Wasserkuppe up to 950 meters, south of the Nust Valley and west of the Ulster Valley. Again the Kuiper escarpment is missing, and even the Muschelkalk only appears in islands around individual domes. The majority of the basalt and phonolite cones sit directly on the sandstones of the Middle Bunter, cutting deeply into the sandstone. The rivers of the Horner and the Fulda flow westwards. The phenolitic cone of the Milsberg is the only mountain in the Kuppenrhön that exceeds the 800-meter mark. Even the height of the Großenallenberg south of the Fulda is not reached in other parts of the region. To the southwest the area is bounded by the rocky sandstone of the Hochkammer as it descends from the heights of the Dammersfeld Ridge, separated from the Kammer by the upper reaches of the Dollbach, the Dollau. The Großhaber on the Rhine-Weser watershed opens the Bruckenau Kuppenrhön, whose western half is in Hesse and whose eastern half is in Bavaria. The valleys of the Schmaler and Breiter Schien running southwestwards divide the natural region, which is clearly more heterogeneous than the other ranges of the Kuppenrhön, into three segments. In the west the rugged plateau of dolerite and basalt transition into the Landrücken, whilst the northeast of the Kleiner Ausberg leads up to the Dammersfeld Ridge. Between the more rugged plateau and ridges there are gently domed basalt intrusions that rise up, especially in the southeast, left of the Schien near Bad Bruckenau. The Dreistelsberg in the extreme south reaches 660.4 meters. Peaks. The most well-known peaks in the Rhön Mountains include Wasserkuppe 950.2 meters, Hessian Rhön, highest peak in the High Rhön and in Hesse. Dammersfeld Kuppe 928 meters, Bavarian Hessian border, High Rhön. Kreuzberg 927.8 meters, Bavarian Rhön, High Rhön. Heidelstein 925.7 meters, Bavarian Hessian border, High Rhön. Himmeldunkberg 887.9 meters, Bavarian Hessian border, High Rhön. Milsberg 835.2 meters, Hessian Rhön, highest peak in the Kuppenrhön. Feuerberg 832 meters, Bavarian Rhön. Ellenbogen 814 meters, Thuringian Rhön. Gebeiberg 751 meters, Hohegiebe, Thuringian Rhön, highest peak in the anterior Rhön. Rivers. The following rivers rise in the Rhön Mountains or flow by or through them. The Franconian Saale rises in Grabfeld, passes the southeast Rhön, flows southwest and into the river Main, and therefore belongs to the catchment area of the river Rhine. The valley of the Franconian Saale in the area around Bad Neustadt forms part of the southeast border of the Rhön with the Grabfeld. Struve rises in the Rhön on the southern slopes of the Ellenbogen and flows southwards into the Franconian Saale. The Brent rises at Oberweissenbrunn in the Rhön, flows southeast into the Franconian Franconian Saale. The Primage rises from numerous springs between the Kreuzberg and the Black Hills, and heads southeast to the Franconian Saale. The Fulda rises on the Wasserkuppe in the Rhön and flows southwards into the Franconian Saale. The Skondra rises in the Rhön and heads south into the Franconian Saale. The Schyn rises in the Rhön near Wildflecken and flows southwards into the Franconian Saale. The Fulda rises in the Rhön on the Wasserkuppe and is the left-head stream of the Weser. The valley of the Fulda in the area around the town of Fulda separates the Rhön from the Vogelsberg Mountains to the west. The Horne rises in the Rhön and flows north into the Fulda. The latter rises below the Wasserkuppe and flows westwards into the Fulda. The Dollau rises in the Rhön and flows via the Fly to the Fulda. The Werra rises on the boundary between the Thuringian Forest and Thuringian Highlands, runs past the Rhön to the northeast and flows northwards. It is the right-head stream of the Weser. The valley of the Werra between Bad Salzungen and Wassungen separates the Rhön from the Thuringian Forest to the east. The Hupf rises in the Rhön and flows east into the Werra. The Ulster rises in the Rhön and flows north into the Werra. The Fulda rises in the Rhön and flows north into the Werra. History. The name Rhön is believed to be of Celtic origin. A regional Celtic presence is well established, with an important Celtic town at Millsberg. Furthermore, there are circular embankments that could be both of Celtic and of Germanic origin in the Kuppenrhön on the Stolberg and the Kleinberg Mountains. Many names of places, mountains and meadows in the Rhön likely have their origins in Celtic root words. Up to the 10th century parts of the Rhön belonged to Altgaubonia. This term was coined by the Romans in late antiquity and described an ancient beech forest in the Rhön and the neighboring low mountain ranges of the Spessart and Vogelsberg. Expansive stands of beech still exist today in the area. Due to the far-reaching view from the Rhön Mountains, they became sites for hilltop castles in the Middle Ages. One example is Horneck Castle on the Stoppelsberg, the ruins of which can still be seen. It served to oversee and protect traffic on the ancient road, the Ant-Sandvia, as well as protecting the villages in the Horne Valley. In the Middle Ages, the Wurzburg defences were erected on the Hoch Rhön for the protection of its farmers. Biosphere Reserve. In 1991, UNESCO declared parts of the Rhön a Biosphere Reserve on account of its unique high-altitude ecosystem, flora and fauna. As a result of its geography and geology, the Rhön is an area with higher than average number of different habitats and species. But man, too, has generated valuable secondary habitats by creating a rich cultural landscape. Plant life compared with other low-mountain regions. The Rhön is particularly rich in plant varieties. Its natural vegetation would probably be dominated by beechwoods with scattered groups of other trees. But today beech trees are very much in decline. A few of these ancient woods were identified as core elements of the Rhön Biosphere Reserve. The higher beechwoods are a habitat for rare, sometimes isolated, species of plants such as the alpine blue sow-thistle, giant bellflower and annual honesty. The vegetation of the lower-lying beechwoods has a mix of mountain and other varieties, in addition to common wildflowers like the martagon lily, lily of the valley, wild chervil and wild garlic. Various orchids also flourish here, including Cephalanthera orchids, the yellow coral root, bird's nest orchid, lady's slipper and lady orchid. Only small areas of the Rhön landscape are essentially open, the high moor bogs, the rock outcrops and the stone runs. These habitats are home to highly specialized species. The high moor bogs of the Long Rhön, the Red Moor and the Black Moor are floristically important links between the northern and alpine high moors. Here, for example, can be found sundews, crowberry and cotton grass. Growing amongst the rocks of the volcanic mountains are rare species such as cheddar pink, sweet William catchfly, oblong woodsia and fir club moss. There are no naturally occurring coniferous forests in the Rhön, but notable species of wildflower such as the lady's slipper orchid, creeping lady's tresses and burning bush are found in the forests of mixed pine. The cultural landscape formed by mankind over the centuries also has a great variety of habitats and plants. However, today, the extensive grassland areas are amongst the most threatened and heavily cultivated habitats. It is on the semi-arid grasslands and juniper heaths that the silver thistle, symbol of the Rhön region, grows, alongside gentians, pasque flowers and wood anemones, as well as orchids like the early purple, fragrant and fly orchids. Rarer flowers include the various bee orchids and the military, lady, burnt, green-winged, man, pyramidal, frog and lizard orchids. Along the southern fringes of the Rhön, on the so-called slopes of steppe heathland, grow warmth-loving plants such as white rock rose, erect clematis and honeywort. Amongst the most valuable habitats in the Rhön are the mountain meadows and fields of mat grass on the higher slopes. Characteristic plants here include the monk's hood, northern wolfsbane, common moonwort, martagon lily, greater butterfly orchid, perennial cornflower and wignapwood, bog bean, grass of Parnassus's western marsh orchid and lousewort are found in the wet meadows and low marshes, and the extremely rare large brown clover, hairy stonecrop and Pyrenean scurvy grass in the spring water marshes of the Hohe Rhön. Wildlife. The wildlife in the Rhön Mountains is similar to that of other low mountain ranges, but there are also some unusual species. In addition to the more common mammals such as roe deer, fox, badger, hare and wild boar, there are also smaller mammals such as the dormouse, common water shrew and Miller's water shrew. One unusual regional species is the alpine shrew. Birds occurring here include the black grouse, the capercaillie, the black stork, the eagle owl, the corncrake, the red-backed shrike and the wryneck. There are also two species endemic to the Rhön, the rove beetle and a local snail, the Ronkelschnecke. Rhön umbrella brand. The Dutch Marker Rhön project is run by the Rhön Working Group, and its aim is to promote a common identity for the Rhön region and to present a unified view of the area to the outside world and to harmonize the marketing measures of the three participating federal states. Tourism. These mountains are a popular tourist destination. Hikers come for the nearly 6,000 kilometers of trails, and gliding enthusiasts have been drawn to the area since the early 20th century. More recently, farm holidays have been flourishing in the region. Attractions: Klaushof Wildlife Park in Bad Kissingen, Bottlauben Castle ruins in Bad Kissingen, Blackmoor, Kloster Kreuzberg, the monastery on the Kreuzberg, Wasserkuppe, the highest mountain, observation post Alpha, a former U.S. during the Cold War, now a memorial. Villages and towns in the Rhön. Towns in the vicinity of the Rhön. Towns and larger villages close to the Rhön are walks and hiking trails. There are well-marked walks and hiking trails in the Rhön which are looked after by the Rhön Club. The Rhön Hohenweg is marked with a horizontal red teardrop. It is 137 kilometers long and runs from Bergsen in Main-Spessart district through Rosbach, Dreistels, Würzburger Haus on the Farnsberg, Kissingerhütte on the Feuerberg, Kreuzberg, Oberweissenbrunn, through the red and black moors, over the Ellenbogen and the Imberg via Oberalba, past Bayer to Stattlingsfelden on to its destination at Bad Salzungen on the Werra River. Other hiking trails are the Ortesweg signposted with a 2/3 full red triangle and running from Klein Heiligkreuz over the Milsberg to Bad Neustadt. The Bergen und Schlosserweg signed with a red triangle from Schlitz via Tann to Wassungen. The Milsberg Weg marked with red triangles from Fulda via the Milsberg to Meiningen. The Wasserkuppe Weg marked with red triangles from Giesel over the Wasserkuppe towards Fladungen. The Heidelstein Weg from Neuhof via Gersfeld to Ostheim vor der Rhön. The Kloster Weg marked with red triangles from Schluchtern via Wildflecken to Melrichstadt. The Kreuzberg Weg marked with red triangles from Schwarzenfels over the Kreuzberg to Bad Königshofen. The Jacobus Weg from Fulda to Schweinfurt signed with blue shells. The Jacobus Weg from Bremen in Thuringia to Herbstein signed with blue shells. The Altsweg from Fulda to Hammelburg signed with a red teardrop. The Rhön Weg from Weiler via Tantedermbach marked with a 2/3 full green triangle. The Geological Walk on the Wasserkuppe. The Auersberg Nature Walk near Hilders. The Milsberg Prehistoric Walk. 10 circular walks in Thallau, a total of 160 kilometers. In addition, the following pass through the Rhön. The main Werra-Weg from Gemenden over the Kreuzberg and Wasserkuppe to Vacha, signed with a red arrowhead. The Rhön-Rennsteig-Weg from the Wasserkuppe over the Jeber to Oberhof, marked with a blue AA on a white background. European Long-Distance Trail No. 3 via Fulda to Melrichstadt, signed with a blue cross. European Long-Distance Trail No. 6 via Hunfeld, Gersfeld to Bad Königshofen, signed with a white cross on a blue background.